the
There's a
roll call's
call in.
taken.
There's a call-in attendee also. Not sure who that is.
That's Tony's number.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start. So thanks for doing this again today. I want to take you through a couple things, and then as we regularly do, my colleagues will join in on some other things as well. Since the governor's announcement on Thursday, so I want to mention the forum that was done on Saturday. If you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to the forum with Raymond Pillsbury, you should. I would recommend it. He was terrific. A lot of the time since last week has been spent on with principals on graduations and graduation and 8th grade student sort of ceremonies. I actually met with Bill McGowan and a couple of his administrators and one of the senior class advisors today. There are lots of ideas being thrown around on those 8th grade ceremonies or on graduation. Nothing terribly firm yet, but lots of ideas about how to do things to acknowledge kids, like having yard signs, Instagram posts, signs on lamp posts, those kinds of things that people are talking about. And particularly the seniors at the high school, I would say they are very, very interested in a person-to-person experience. They've seen what happened at the Air Force Academy last week. They are interested in doing something like that, if that's what it would take for them to be together. Understanding that experience was done with social distancing, with no observers, that it could be done so that it could be telecast in real time, those kinds of things. So, but there's a lot of conversation going on right now about that. Similar conversations with the principals around 8th graders and those kinds of experiences. Some of them talking about parades, some of them talking about staff wanting to come in the school while students come in and do a parade, sort of a reverse parade. But they're all just ideas that people are generating right now, and so all good ones. I want to say that a lot of principals are talking more about trying to do other things, remote experience. I had a conversation, for example, today with Erin Milbury. Usually they do something for 4th grade parents of kids who are moving up to the middle school. She's looking at ways with her 5th grade team to replicate that experience online in some way. Susan Snyder talked with me about doing an online kindergarten orientation program for incoming kindergarten families. And so you're seeing more of people trying to figure out, is there some way to replicate these experiences, not in exactly the same way, but something so people can connect and get something out of these experiences of having their kids move on or enter school or whatever it may be. We've spent a lot of time with the commissioner and others over the last week on the criteria for reopening schools. We're anticipating we may begin to get some documents on that soon. We've been counseled we should think about summer programs, both as a potential for an in-person experience and the potential that they will still be remote. And so we're planning both right now, probably with more time being spent on the remote because that takes more time to do. And so we're expecting that we're going to hear you're beginning to see some documents published by some national organizations, state organizations on what it would take to reopen schools. And there's some of the things we've talked about, social distancing, gloves, masks, temperature taking, tests, with the potential for split sessions. All those kinds of things are in these documents that are beginning to be published. So I said we're talking a lot about summer programs. That's not just our ESY programs, but really all the summer kinds of experiences that we run throughout the schools. We met earlier with the chairs of each of the boards because we're very close to an agreement with the teachers union on some what's called a memorandum of agreement, which governs the practice of what we're doing now. We hope to bring it to you next Tuesday. It's focused largely on the things that you've heard about already, the amount of time we're asking people to connect directly with kids, the calendar, payment, sick time, those kinds of things that people may need to access. As I said to the chairs earlier, there's nothing in that document that we aren't already doing. It just puts those things in an agreement that looks different, quite frankly, than what our normal collective bargaining agreement says we're supposed to be doing, because we're not doing those things right now. Our hope is to bring that to you, have it to you in enough time so that you can have some time to look at it. I hope to get it to you this weekend and then discuss it on Tuesday. And the last thing I'll mention that I'm sure Matt will expand upon is over the next week and a half, Matt and I are going to spend some time with town administrators in each of your towns, in each of the towns, talking about finances. Hearing from them what they see as the challenges ahead because of the pandemic, and hearing from them the kinds of things that some of them are already starting to put into place. And so we'll then be meeting with principals to be talking about the kinds of things that we may be able to consider bringing to you as recommendations down the road. So we're just starting those on Monday. I think they go on for about a week because there are 5 of them, those meetings. And we'll be able to talk with you. Some of you may know what some of them are doing already. You may know because you live in those towns. But we'll be able to share with you some of what they think we're confronting, at least over the next year. Any questions on any of that before I turn this over to Dr. Hobb? Okay, Dr. Hobbs.
Sure. Okay, curriculum update. So I'll start with summer school. I've had some conversations, preliminary conversations with assistant principals at Winnacunnet about what summer school can look like. And quite frankly, in this remote learning environment, if it's not successful for a student trimester 3, what can it look like in the summer to make it more successful for students? So we're looking at a little bit more of a creative approach with respect to who's teaching the classes, with respect to some of the partnerships that we're creating, if we can team up with VLAX, for example. Also some creativity in the referral process, getting a sense from guidance about who would be a good fit for some of the summer program that we want to put together. I will keep you posted on that, but and like I said, these are preliminary conversations, but we're looking to get outside the box on that. Second is, and this actually came up in the commissioner's conference call today, it was dual enrollment and running start classes. I've checked in with our curriculum coordinator at the high school, and we've got a pathway forward to ensure students get their credit and continue that curriculum with Great Bay Community College we have arrangements with, and Southern New Hampshire University. In addition, I'll be touching base with the actual teachers of those classes just to make sure that we're all on the same page and that grading and assessment wise, we're good. A big conversation is kind of coming out of NHSAA, New Hampshire School Administrators Associations, about local assessments and about statewide assessments for the fall. There's kind of a push and pull about what exactly we want to put our students on the hook for in the fall in terms of assessments. And they are in the works right now of creating basically a database of local assessments that we can use to keep tabs on where our students are when they come back in the fall, as opposed to the logistical issues and frankly the stress issues of administering a larger standardized tests at the fall period. So that's an ongoing conversation between NHSAA, the state, et cetera, and all the players there. But we are participating in that. We are cataloging our local assessments like NEWA, STAR, DIBELS, all that, so that they know that we do have local assessments to use in that capacity. The last thing I wanted to touch on with respect to that assessment is, and I know this came up prior, They do have what are called modular or benchmark assessments through the SAS, the statewide assessment system. And what they are kind of short, 30-minute assessments, and it's online. Students may have the ability, they wouldn't be required to log on and do it, but they would have the ability to log on and kind of run that as a diagnostic. That's an ongoing conversation with the state. I think it holds promise, but we'll see where that goes. Lastly is AP. I know I've been back and forth a little bit, but AP exams have been shortened up. They've been put online. They're open book. And we are looking at them for, I think it's mid-May, May 11th, I think they start. So we're looking at that testing window and making sure our kids are ready for that. That's kind of where we are with respect to curriculum. Questions?
Thanks, David. Dr. Killian?
Thank you. So just a few updates. First, our meal program is holding steady at serving over 270 students Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Today was 180 kids served at Seabrook and out of Seabrook with delivery, and 94 at Winnicott. In special education, we are, as Dr. Lupini mentioned, we are focused on preliminary plans for the summer. And we are assuming that's going to be remote instruction. And if there are any restrictions that are relaxed, we will take that into consideration when we get there. But at this point, we're looking to leverage some funds that are allocated to us in a way that's efficient across our districts. So we're just beginning those conversations in our weekly meetings with directors. The director of special services at the Bureau of Student Support at the New Hampshire DOE announced yesterday that they will be opening up the electronic signature capacity of our online special education information system. So that's really good news, because that means we don't have to look outside for something that's compliant with data governance, and nor something that is costly. So that's good news that that'll be rolled out by the DOE at some point, and then they will also have guidance and training along with that. So that was some good news from the DOE. Let's see what else here. Data governance training was held, as I mentioned last week, was held, Jason Saltmarsh, our IT director at Winnicott, held a training for all of our educational associates on Friday. We recorded it and shared with all staff yesterday. So that's important, of course, particularly due to remote instruction, that people have a reminder about the rules and regulations around privacy and security when teaching our students online. And then lastly, our new digital tip line hotline, quick tip hotline is active. It's linked on all of our websites, the SAU website and all the district websites, where anyone can, so that staff or parent or even student could go on and make a tip regarding any unsafe behavior. So whether that's violence or threats to self, threat to others, drugs and alcohol, sexual harassment, any of those unsafe behaviors can be reported, and it'll go directly to school administrators. It is routed to those administrators. And we're also in the process of sharing that information with the community. So parents will have that information when they are required to be reporting some of those unsafe behavior, and if they are seeing any kind of signs of suspected childhood abuse or neglect. So that is forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Killian. Any questions for Caroline? So let me just say that the issue that Caroline, and it's one of those issues that, right, we've had to deal with that take all kinds of time. This issue of signatures and IEP meetings is a big one, right? She's told you a number of times that they're holding IEP meetings, but creating a system so that parents could actually sign the IEPs remotely, given some of the federal and state rules that were in place and what we would have had to do, it would have been costly for us to have put something in place. So that news from the department is really a big deal in our world in terms of parents being able to do that. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrar?
Hello. Good
Looks like
evening.
you have company.
I was just shown a T-Rex, a new T-Rex toothbrush. So to echo Caroline's remarks in regard to school nutrition, I just can't stress the importance of meals for our students. So currently we're at approximately 11% of our entire student population are being serviced with these free meals. And we do anticipate those numbers to increase as we continue through with this crisis, and families, are affected economically, as this, from a macro level, as this, affects people's jobs and the economy. So that being said, I know I mentioned at our last update that we are exploring the option of providing meals through the summer. That is our intention to bring forth to the board to provide this same framework of meals starting after June 5th through to the beginning of the school year. Our school nutrition directors are exploring our reimbursement options. It does look like we will be eligible through our seamless summer program and potential other waivers to continue that program. Additionally, we should have an account up by the end of this week to accept any donations for the summer school meal program on our website, because there has been significant interest from the community as to how they can donate to support this meals program. So now that we're formally working remotely through the end of the school year, we can provide some better estimates on the fiscal impact and how we should end our budgets for the fiscal year 2020. We do anticipate recognizing some savings, so we are working with each of our individual school districts to revise our POs, our purchase orders, to reflect the decrease in spending. We have some open POs out there to better reflect accurate encumbrances, and I do intend to have a better estimate as to how we will end the year at each of our school districts at our individual school board meetings in the next few weeks during our May board meetings. So as Dr. Lupini mentioned, we do have a concern about declining tax revenues in each of our communities. And as such, we are meeting with our town administrators. We're meeting with a few select board members as well as budget committee members to better gauge their thoughts on how the towns will be affected, from a revenue standpoint, and how the school districts are connected in that manner. Now, I will say that we cannot monetarily directly assist the towns. Legally, there's no mechanism in place to provide fiscal support for the town. If we return funds to the town, it doesn't go to the town. It gets returned to the taxpayers in the form of assessments reduction. So we can't directly affect any sort of revenue decline the town is experiencing. They will likely be issuing TANs, which are tax anticipation notes, to bridge any potential revenue gap. However, we do need to be cognizant about how this does affect our individual communities. I did mention this the last time we met, but I cannot stress it enough. We really do need to be fiscally responsible. We do not, as an SAU, do not anticipate bringing forth any projects utilizing unexpended funds at the end of the year. We are meeting with, subsequently with our meetings with the town administrators, we are setting up meetings with each of our individual principals to review our spending, not only for the end of this year, which is, effectively, frozen regardless, because there really aren't, at this point, we've expended, our necessary, investments, whether it's technology or subscriptions, sanitizing the buildings, et cetera. We could have some additional costs as we closed out the year, but for this year, we should have a pretty solid number. But we also want to look at next year and how we could potentially recognize any sort of savings and and return any potential funds back to our communities. This is going to hit our various segments of our population pretty significantly. It already has, and we want to make certain that, and in turn, that affects the how we look at budgeting going forward. We certainly want to make certain that everyone in our communities knows that we are being as fiscally responsible as possible as we go into our next budget cycles, because this will certainly affect how easily it is to pass our budgets and pass warrant articles, because people will be feeling it. I think that is it from me in regard to finances. I just want you to be aware that we are looking at every possible means to recognize any sort of cost savings.
Yeah, so what that means specifically in terms of those meetings with principals is just we'll take a look, for example, at assumptions that we made about class sizes and incoming kindergartners, if we're talking about K-8 schools, those kinds of things. I mean, that's essentially where we'll start. The high school will take a look at the assumptions that were made, and then as they've started to do schedules, how those assumptions are actually playing out. That's sort of the nature of those conversations that we'll be having with principals after those meetings with town officials. Any questions on any of that or anything else?
Right, Tom.
Yeah, so I just had a couple quick questions. So first of all, thank you for the updates and your continued work. You were talking about the collective bargaining agreements, and you're going to have some updates for us. It got me thinking about the administration, your entire team at the SAU, and then also leadership in our buildings. Do we need to take a look at any of the contracts and make changes to evaluation criteria or anything else with your team?
No, not evaluation criteria. Our evaluations of principals and others are already underway for the end of the year. That process we did with them. We laid out the process over the last couple of weeks. We will have a recommendation for you with respect to vacation time, because obviously people aren't able to use it, and people have certain clauses in their contract about losing vacation or only being able to carry over so much. So we will have some recommendations next week for you on that.
Okay, great, thank you. And then second question had to do with kind of the new schedule. So now we're into this for the rest of the year. We agreed upon a 4-day teaching schedule. I just wanted to check and see how that's going, feedback from teachers, if that Friday's giving them the time that they need to do both professional development and their other work, and just kind of get a pulse on how you think it'll go between now and June 4.
Someone described the teacher's reaction as to that as life-saving. That was a significant positive for our teachers who, off of the first number of days before we did that, were feeling it. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in. I see you shaking your head, Caroline, because I think you may have been the person that said that to me. Yeah, and the reaction we've had from, or that I've received anyhow, and as much as I get direct reaction from parents, has been very positive as well. Anybody else want to jump in on that question?
It's loud in my house, but yeah. So I do the weekly survey with the teachers and get their feedback about leadership. What changes can we make? Yeah, I would characterize it as more relief than anything else. I think we had some teachers that were pretty fried, and the ability just to take a breath on Friday, meet with their peers, has been seen as more life-saving than anything else.
It also allows for a common meeting time. So if departments want to get together, or even all faculty meetings, and still some reaching out to students, it just allows for some of that to happen versus having it scattered all throughout the week. So I've heard a lot of positive feedback about the schedule.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for that question.
I have a question. Regarding the summer program, obviously it's going to change drastically and we're going to be feeding more students. Does Matt have any projections as far as how much of a bump we're going to take on that and how we're going to reach out to the community to solicit funding / produce and such?
Do you want to jump in, Matt?
I think it's frozen.
Oh, Matt's frozen? He is frozen.
Freeze thawed.
Discussion.
Oh, there he is. He's back.
Oh, you're back. Matt, you were frozen for a
You
little
were
bit.
frozen.
Oh, okay. So to restart, so we are currently gathering the data to provide an estimate for the financial implication for a summer program. So right now, we have to look at the actual supplies, so the food, the paperware, labor, transportation. We don't have that number yet. However, I will when I present it to the board. However, based on preliminary discussions with the school nutrition department at the state level, we are confident that we should be reimbursed fully for this program. So there should be no net effect for us. That's best case scenario. There might be some costs as far as transportation that we won't that won't be covered. However, we can that's where those private donations or operating budget could cover. So.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else?
I just have a quick question, and this would be primarily for the high school. Has there anyone that's reached out to the parochial and the private schools, parents, with sort of the impetus to bring them back into our schools? Because there was an exodus in the last, I'd say, 4 to 5 years. And the reason I mention this is that there's probably some parents that really can't afford the parochial and the private schools. And I was wondering, Winneconnett's not facing a declining enrollment, but soon it will. So I was just wondering if there's any impetus to do that.
We've done either at the elementary school level or the high school level. We've not done any of that. Quite frankly, I know you know this. Most of our time has been spent taking care of the kids that we have and our teachers and our community and our families. I think I had that experience in another community in 08, 09. I think you will see some of that. I think there are some things we can do just to make sure people know what we offer and what we're able to do for kids. And I think June and July is probably the time for us to begin to do some of that. But no, Henry, we quite frankly haven't thought about it at all yet. But it's a good point.
Because I usually ask every board meeting to Bill about, numbers at Winnicott, for example, which is important
Yes.
there as well. I'm vacillating here, but I attended parochial school and I've taught at or worked at the private schools. And at this point in time, it's expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, our the one area that's kind of goes along with this is that, and I sort of alluded to it earlier, our kindergarten numbers pretty much across the districts are down. And I think they're down not because the kids aren't there, they're down because timing of registrations and all kind of hit one side and another of the beginning of this. And so principals are trying to do some more creative things, including individual phone calls, to begin to reach out to people to try to make they capture the population so that we don't make decisions based on bad data. Because right now our numbers are down in most of the communities.
Bill, may
Anything?
I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Sure. My question is, it might be to Dave Hobbs, actually. And my question is this. You had mentioned possibly using VLAX over the summer. And I'm just curious for what population would you be looking at using that?
Yeah, that's the thing about VLAX is the Lexile is pretty high. The reading levels are pretty high associated with some of the content that they put out. So it's always kind of, we're rolling the dice with VLAX regardless, in whatever capacity we use it with. So that's where it really hinges on the referral process. We need to find the right solutions for the right kids. And it might not be VLAX for everybody, but it certainly might be an option for some of our kids, especially in that summer context,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay.
Hey Matt, this is Greg. Sorry.
That's okay.
Last minute question. In terms of sanitizing the school, I know you did the initial pass. Are we still planning to do the next pass, or are we just kind of letting it go since we won't be returning to the school?
Yeah, so we're still planning on doing it, but not until 48 hours, 72 hours prior to the reentry. So it's probably going to be the end of August.
Would that be necessary given the time of vacancy and what we know about the dangers?
Well, it's so I mean, you raise a good point as far as the the potential lifespan of the virus. So certainly if the school was empty for the entire summer, then that might be the case. However, we do anticipate kind of phasing in staff over the summer. Certainly our facilities team, and there has been various staff members in our school for whatever reason it is, like we're having someone pick up some trout out of a Northampton classroom next week. There'll be people through the building, and we just want to ensure that prior to bringing everyone in, that it is fully sanitized at that point. So. Mm-hmm. We're also waiting for guidance from the state and the CDC as far as what they recommend prior to reentry. It's my understanding that they will provide some guidelines as to what schools should do as far as sanitizing. So we'll certainly take that into account. prior to reentry.
Yeah, that's supposed to be part of those criteria for reopening.
Since you mentioned some teachers have gone back in, is there a means for other teachers requesting entry into school for any items? I know, for example, this morning on a kindergarten Zoom meeting, there was a Lego challenge that had happened, and there was about 4 kids that said, I don't have Legos in my house. Like, I can't do that. So we've been trying to get donations together to drop at these kids' houses. But I know the teachers were like, if I could just get into my classroom, I could get these kids some things. But that's a no.
So we've not talked about another opportunity for teachers to go in and get things. We did that a couple weeks ago, quietly, although it was known by all staff to do that. So that didn't come up at principals meeting this week. We can bring it up next week in terms of whether we would do that. The question I'm anticipating coming very soon is, when my child left school on the 13th, they left all this stuff. When are we going to get it back?
Yeah.
That's the question I'm waiting for, that I also don't have an answer for right now. But we know we're going to have to deal with that sometime in June, whether it's in June or whatever as well. That people are going to want to get things out of lockers and whatever, and we're going to have to figure out a way to control for that. So Aaron, I'll bring that up with principals.
Okay. Thank you. And since I'm talking, is there any talk about delaying graduation for 8th graders, or I know maybe the high school doesn't want to, but more of like the possibility of some sort of gathering in August?
Yeah, so let me be really clear about the high school, which is probably the one where I've had the most detailed conversations with the high school principal, the senior class advisor, and even the senior student council representatives. They are well aware that if we're doing something face to face, it's probably not going to be in June, right? So July or August, and they've talked openly about understanding, and they're worried. In the case of the high school, that means that there are some kids who are going in the service who will be gone on July 1st. So they'd rather not do that, but they're really interested in a face-to-face experience, and they understand that right now that couldn't occur early in June, right?
Yeah.
So the conversations we've been having there and for 8th graders is sort of about doing something as we get to June, whether that's yard signs, whether that's the reverse parade, whatever it may be, something with some possibility of some face-to-face experience. Now at Southampton, if I tell the principal, look, here are the parameters, it's kids only, it's spaced appropriately, or even if it's kids, because there's 12 of them, there's 12 8th graders, right? So could you do it with 1 or 2 guests, appropriate social distancing outside? Sure, right? If we had the right kind of group size parameters, you could probably do that. At the high school, much like that Air Force graduation, it's probably the students only, and it's closed circuit TV of some sort for people to watch it. So we're having all those conversations, but Aaron, to your point, most any ideas about anything face-to-face, people pretty much understand they're probably not going to be possible in June, or at least in early June.
Yeah.
Now, the governor just announced his task force on re-entering the economy and all today, right? So we'll take a look at what they say. Does he modify his parameters on group sizes? If he does, we might be able to figure out some scenarios where we do social distancing in a field at some point that may be as early as June or mid-June, late June, whatever it may be. We're just trying to plan within the contingencies that we're given right now.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, my question is with the graduation, I mean, if we did one on the ball field, I mean, the football field, like they did over this past weekend, I mean, I don't see why that couldn't be done in June
Right.
because it's, I mean, we could do that literally next week if we had to. I mean, it's literally setting up the camera and spacing chairs out. So I don't know why we'd have to wait till July to do that. Do you?
I want to get some additional clarity on the governor's group size parameters, which I don't think they were facing there. I'd have to go back and look at his executive order and those criteria, but they were talking about July today, and I did suggest that we take a look if they wanted to do that kind of event. To your point, that we would take a look at the parameters under which we're operating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be sooner.
Okay.
So yes, we're gonna try to take a look at that.
Yeah, I just think that like everybody does, the sooner the better, because the kids that are going into the military or jobs or off to something else are going to be gone come mid-June. So the sooner we can get on that, the better.
I agree. Yes, they don't, and I don't, and I know Bill doesn't want to exclude anyone from that event, including, by the way, we've talked about this almost from the beginning as including the evening school students in that experience, rather than trying to do this twice. Good God, just trying to do one experience for all of those students. So it's about 230 of them in total if you count the evening school.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Anything? Okay. Thank you. See you all soon.
I think
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.